everybody, to the Wednesday edition of the Daily Cheat Sheet. We're Golan Ramraz. The dude is missing for a few minutes, but hopefully we will see him soon. Golan, I put up a poll yesterday on Truth Social, basically saying, should Pam Bondi and the DOJ get a pass for the Epstein files? It got a lot of votes. It got close to 700 votes, which by any polling metric, pollsters, that's a pretty big sample size, especially of Trump reporters. And the answers were yes, no, hell no. And 13% were yes. So it was a toss-up between the hell no's and the no's. And this is what I have to say. Go on this. Republicans suck.
Explain your position.
No, I will. They suck. And we voted Donald Trump in for DEI. We voted him in for the economy. We voted him in for the border. We voted him for trans. We voted him for the colleges. Every promise he's made, every promise he's kept. And Republicans are willing to die and take a stand on this one issue. And it's about 20 to 30% of the party that actually cares. I'd say 70% of the other one don't give a crap about this story. But that 30% is extremely vocal. They're extremely loud. And this is what separates the left from the right. The left knew for 4 years that Biden was out of this world, and they didn't care. They covered it up. And what this shows is really a lack of respect for President Trump. And I know people might disagree with me on that, and I don't really care.
You know, I don't think you're wrong, although I don't necessarily think it has to do with Trump. I think it has to do with what you said a moment ago. I think it has to do with Republicans suck. Republicans these days feel like a case study in self-ownage, to coin a phrase. And what I mean by that is not that I need everybody to agree all the time. In fact, I don't want that. We've spoken about this before. I like the fact that the Republicans are a party of conversation, of debate, of warring ideologies that eventually sharpen into something cohesive. I'm a writer. As a writer, I love working with a writing partner. Why? Because I'll come up with a great idea. It's the best idea anyone's ever had. And they'll come up with a great idea. And then together we come up with something that neither of us could have come up with on our own. That to me is a beautiful thing. That's not what I'm seeing. What I'm seeing now is instead of us sharpening arguments against the left, or instead of us sharpening arguments against something that could injure the country, we are like stumbling over ourselves to cancel each other like we're in a reality show, not just on this topic. We're talking about, you mentioned the Jeffrey Epstein files, right? Not just on that. It has to do with what's going on with Iran and Israel. It's like Republicans are tripping over themselves for clicks and clout while the Democrats are marching in lockstep. Again, I don't want us to be the Borg. That's not the idea, is for us to be like they are. But at the end of the day, it's killing the movement. It feels like people are more interested in clicks than country. And it's all in the name of being different. That's not brave. It's like bad brand management. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think the Republicans are dropping the ball right now because they're all trying to prove how cool they are.
And the dude who has just joined the show, we were discussing that poll I put up where 700 people voted, and it was should Bondi and Patel get a pass? And I'm getting really tired, man, of Republicans. I really am. I don't consider myself a Republican. I consider myself a conservative. To be honest, I don't know what these people consider themselves. I don't believe it's a conservative. And I don't care if people get upset with that. But man, everything Trump has promised, he's kept. And if people are willing to die on this hill of Israel or Epstein, screw them. Screw them and leave the party, and we'll rebuild again. But I'm just tired of this. The left, like we brought up a few seconds ago, man, had Dementia Joe in the White House, and they covered it up for 4 years.
Collectively,
the disrespect to Trump, man, that they are showing right now by not letting him just have a mulligan on one thing is insane to me.
Look, we hashed this out the past couple of episodes, but there is things that the administration could do. Bondi got up there and she said that not only was there a list of people who participated in this, she goes, there's a lot of people that are trying to keep their names private and they have no right to keep it private. And we're going to make all of that transparent. The only ones that are going to be private are the ones that are cooperating and the child victims. And to do this 180 and to say just there's nothing there, it's terrible optics. It's just unbelievable. So I understand the outrage. And I think the administration could do better. And even if that means coming out and saying that the guy worked for us, he worked for the government, and we need that data. And that's where it
That
is.
would, here's the thing, man, that wouldn't suffice. You could give these people anything and they wouldn't believe it. This is literally smut porn for conspiracy for these people. It's no different than
Bondi came out and said that there are thousands of hours of videotape pornographic material between adults and kids. You can't just make that go away. That just doesn't
but
go
okay,
away.
wait. I want to separate two issues out. We all agree that they dropped the ball in terms of messaging. We all agree that the way this looked was bad. We talked about the optics of it 2 episodes ago, and we talked about it a little bit in the last episode. Judah's talking about something else. Judah's talking about the circular firing squad within the Republican Party. You know, if you think about, for instance, what Matt Gaetz did with Kevin McCarthy, he didn't do that because he was trying to improve the party. He did that because he was trying to improve his own brand, right? And that seems to be what Republicans are doing time and again. They are willing to sacrifice the country. They're willing to sacrifice the party. They're willing to sacrifice the message and the improvements and everything else they want to do in order to beat their chest and say, I'm the one that is in charge. Actually, Tucker is the one who leads the party. Candace is the one who leads the party. Matt Gaetz is the one who leads the party, as opposed to saying, yes, they screwed up, but as a party, we are still a cohesive, strong unit. So it's not about what they should have done or could have done. Right now, we're talking about how, in general, the Republicans act when they are not working together to try to improve the country.
Listen, men, is the economy, are you happy with it? Is it getting better for you? Are you happy? Are you happy with the border?
Listen, he's winning on so many fronts.
I'm just asking you to answer these questions. Are you happy with the border?
Absolutely.
Are you happy with his policies on DEI?
Everything, yes.
Are you happy with what he's doing on the campuses?
Absolutely.
So everything he ran on,
besides Epstein,
promises made. He didn't run on Epstein. It was
he said he was going to release all the files.
I know, but that wasn't a thing that people went to the voting booth for, was to get the Epstein files out.
In part, we were sick. The people of this country were sick of the corruption. Epstein was the perfect example of it, of elites that fly to an island and rape kids. And when I first heard that, when Alex Jones first talked about an island of child rapists, we all thought he was fucking crazy. Right? The guy's wearing a tinfoil hat. When Alex Jones said that there's an island out there where the global elites go to and they molest kids and they rape children, we thought he was insane. Turned out he was right. That's what, when we said the other day that sometimes he gets things right, that guy does get things right sometimes. For the most part, he's off his rocker. He's way out there. When you have something like that, and then you just come out and say there was nothing there.
We're not debating that. We're not debating the horrific
I also don't think
messaging.
you need to defend it. I could say that this administration so far, I agree with everything they're doing besides Epstein, and I wish they do better with that. What's wrong with that?
You know what's wrong with that?
What's wrong with that?
Is we're going to lose the next election with talking points like that.
No,
oh yes, 100% we will.
Not over.
I think the bigger problem is that nothing is 100%. If Judah just went through a list of 20 items that he ran on, that he has delivered on, right? Promises made, promises kept. And there is one issue. And by the way, if you go back to when he was actually campaigning on this, what did he say? He was on the Lex Friedman podcast, right? And he said, if I get reelected, I'm willing to release the Jeffrey Epstein client list, right? I have no problem sharing it publicly. But he was speaking about something that he didn't know anything about, at least in theory, right? And so then he got into office. The problem was all the other messaging, Pam Bondi saying the list's on my desk, or all the other stuff we've already talked about. But let's assume for a moment, I'm not saying this is the case, we know what we think about the optics, but let's assume for a moment there is no Epstein client list. Okay, let's assume that the DOJ finished their investigation and this was the conclusion, or that it would be too damaging. It's something that could damage the country, or who knows what, or it's CIA, like you talked about, man, any of those things, right? If this is the one item where he's like, look, I even made the DOJ do an investigation. Ultimately, the conclusion was there's nothing to release. I wouldn't release it if it had existed.
Right there.
Great.
Right there. That was it. What you just said right there. He could have come out and say, you know what? The previous DOJ did a very crappy job and there's nothing here. We are going to open up a new investigation. We're going to get to the bottom of it. And within 60, 90, 120 days, we're going to have a news conference and give you guys an update of what's going on. They didn't do that. They didn't do that. What they did was they said, oh,
But we agree that the
Pam Bondi says,
messaging was garbage.
I opened
What
the
I'm
file.
saying is, if there are 20 things that you say are spectacular, and this one thing that he kind of referenced in a podcast and then was obviously messaging bad, no question about that. But if this is the one issue, and we are going hard, as I'm talking about as people who are in that camp, going hard against this one issue, all the other issues fade away. And then suddenly we're the party that didn't deliver. We're the party that lied. We're the party that's covering up for child, rapists and all the rest. And instead of all the wins, they all disappear in the wind. And suddenly we're just defined by this one thing. And it's like what I talk about when Jews say the wrong thing about Israel. And they're like, see, even Jews agree. And now we're all in trouble. Now it's even Republicans agree. Trump's a liar who protects child rapists. And now that's the message, instead of it being about other stuff. Hey, you know what? We don't like the optics. We don't like the messaging, but we recognize he's doing a spectacular job and let's roll. Or, hey, launch another investigation. Let's call for that. But also look at what wins we're getting. We're not doing that. We continue doing the circular firing squad thing where we're taking ourselves down in the process.
We're doing that. We're calling it out. We're saying the guy's winning on all fronts, and they messed up royally on this one thing.
Yeah, except the louder voices, man. The 30%, the Alex Jones, the Rogans, whoever it is, are not talking about that. That's not how they're phrasing the issue. If they phrase the issue like we're phrasing the issue, great, 100%.
What you're asking is not consistent. You're asking for them to be
party.
You're asking them to be Republican Party shills, and they're not.
No, I'm not.
You're saying, yeah, you are. You're saying protect the party because this is very bad optics. It's bad optics.
I disagree. Look, this isn't even my topic. This is Judah's topic, but I think it's something else. I think he's saying keep it in perspective. If there are, I'm just using the number 20. If there's 20 spectacular things that are actually life-changing things, like the border, like the economy, like DEI, like these things that truly matter for our future, and this one thing we wish would get done, which is not a life-changing thing, but it is something we want resolved, is the issue, keep it in perspective. It has become the number one thing amongst those people, and all the other things have faded away. What Judah's saying is the fact that you have erased all the rest of it means that now this is all that's left.
Who is erasing the rest of it? Who are we talking about? Are you talking about Tucker, the guy who just interviewed the Iranian president? Who are we talking about?
Man, it's not just Tucker. It's Benny Johnson. It's Alex Jones. You want
Alex Jones
again? Millions.
Tucker, Alex, who? Candace? You're talking about these lunatics.
Steve Bannon. You call them lunatics, but they have millions of listeners and followers. We can't minimize them by saying they're lunatics. We can't.
Well, there is a solution. The solution is the administration could do better at releasing information about Epstein.
Okay, yes.
That's so you're doing everything but call out the. I'm calling them out.
I've called out the administration for the last 3 days. Yeah. I've been saying for ages about how bad their messaging has been. I don't think anybody
leave it at that. Leave it at that.
I could deny that I've said the White House messaging go on has been horrific.
No, I think at least for the last 2 episodes since the bad announcement came, I think we've all been in lockstep, actually. The three of us saying the optics of this were horrible. This was badly done. The PR, actually, Judah, you kind of spearhead the PR that they're doing is awful. And we agree, right? Mend and I think you and I have said we're absolutely on the same page about that. What I'm saying is if GOP figures are spotlighting the Epstein thing, then that means that we have the Steve Bannons and the Marjorie Taylor Greens and, of course, the Elon Musks and the Laura Loomers and the, whoever else. There's a whole long list, by the way, of people in the Republican Party. And yes, they may be the fringe and they may be the lunatics and they may be people we don't like, but there are also the people who are saying all the other stuff that we know they are likely getting a little bit of extra on the side for. And yeah, that's happening, but it is actually affecting the party as a whole. And so I don't think that what Judah's saying is out of line. Yes, we agree they should have done better. And we agree their messaging should have been better. But we also have to be cognizant of the fact that if you have Biden in office and he, as you said, gets lost in his closet and shits himself on stage, and every single person in that party is like, everything's great, no problem, then they are making sure that they are protecting their party, not because they're only being shills, but also because they recognize that the future is what's going to be secured as a result. And we are not considering the future as we go hard against one topic and ignore the rest.
I just want to end it with this. To Men's point, Golan, I look at this and I look at the DNC chair not condemning Mamdani, being okay with the global intifada, absolute rampant anti-Semitism, anti-Americanism, saying we're a big tent. That's a pretty big damn story that should be amplified.
That's a real one. That's a huge one. And it's okay to say that the administration messed up with this Epstein thing, and they can do better. Not should have done better. That's in the past. But they could still do better. They could fix
people,
this.
Man, the difference is we speak about this all the time. You're a different breed of a human, okay? So the reason we could talk to you about this is because you're consciously thinking about these types of things. Your goal is not money in the objective of your opinion. So I have no problem with your beliefs because I believe they're 100% who you are as a human. I don't believe the 30% that are screaming about this have the same motives as you.
No, they know that the base loves that, and they're screaming about it because they also it's important to the base. That's another aspect of it. Of course, yes, it's clickbait for them. They put that up, they talk about it, they're getting way more interactions and way more engagement. Yeah, that's true. But also, you can't ignore the fact that everybody wanted that list released. Everybody wants those people to be brought to justice, and it's not happening. And that's the problem right there.
What I'm seeing is the headlines, and that's what worries me. Because right now, if you look at Axios, their biggest headline about this is about how Trump is facing a MAGA, quote, trust crisis over the Epstein, quote, debacle, right? The Times, their headline, this is an international newspaper, MAGA backlash over botched FBI Jeffrey Epstein investigation. Headlines that are all shouting about how Trump is losing his base. MAGA influencers are saying he's out of step with the movement he built. Elon Musk's post, which is getting 1 million likes, is how can people be expected to have faith in Trump if he won't release the Epstein files? They are making this the purity test as if MAGA has forgotten about all the other things that MAGA cared about. And this is the only thing that matters. That is worrying to me because this is how you convince the other side that they've got power, and power often is just in your head. So if they are convinced they can surge, then they will begin to do stuff that they wouldn't have done otherwise. And the other side of it is the people who are on the conservative side of things are going to assume that they're weaker and they will begin to fade. And what you're going to see is a power dynamic shift because of one issue instead of all the rest of the stuff that also should matter. That's all.
I'm going to say one thing, and it's basically this. There's an easy fix. The administration needs to come out and hang everyone that was involved, that was culpable, that was guilty of child rape. That's the easy fix. You can't scream at the messengers. You guys are getting angry at the messenger. You can't. It's foolish.
Okay, so listen, obviously we disagree with this on this thing, obviously, and this is what separates.
I don't even know what to disagree. I think you agree with me.
We completely disagree. We absolutely completely disagree because what I keep on saying is no matter what you feed these animals, it'll never be enough food for them.
What you're saying is they did the same thing on Iran, they did the same thing on Israel, they did the same thing on Epstein. They are continually looking for clout. And they're doing it at the expense of the future.
Moving on. I want to bring up something. It came out, Austin is a blue city in a red state. And the fire chief, Joel Baker, who's the fire chief of Austin, Texas, refused to send firefighters to help out save those kids' lives in Kerr County during the flooding. And he said, we need to hold on to those resources ourselves. And the Firefighters Association came out against him and said that he refused to allow their firefighters to go save lives.
I think the entire country is, again, we've talked about the silos that we put ourselves in. And I think that this is just another shameful example of the same thing. Imagine a future in which the parties only take care of their own. I'm sorry, we're the Democratic police, we're the Republican police, we're the Democrat firefighters, we're the Republican firefighters. It's insanity.
We're seeing that. We saw that during the FEMA disaster in, North Carolina, where they were skipping houses that had Trump signs in front of it. Literal, the people there to give out aid to the victims of natural disasters, federal employees were skipping the houses of the political party that they did not agree with. And here we're seeing it in Austin, Texas. I mean, Austin's a fantastic city. It's
I mean, you're talking
thriving, it's
about where they were
vibrant.
literally told by their higher ups, if there was a pro-Trump sign in the lawn, skip the house.
Yeah. Yeah. That
I
came
mean,
out. That
that's what
woman.
I'm talking about. This is
Yeah.
happening more and more and more.
Yeah. And it's usually, I don't see it going the other way. I don't see people doing it, boycotting, or denying service to Democrat leaning voters, but you see a lot of it the other way. And, I think that's blatantly wrong. Absolutely. This guy should be held accountable. I'd love to see what happens. That's a city that, it's a progressive city, Austin. And I would love to see how they deal with that because
I have a
you get
theory on
victims like
this.
children. It's just, go ahead.
I have a theory on this. My theory on this is maybe not a popular one, but I think it's a lack of religion. And I know that this is one of those like third rail topics you're not supposed to discuss. I'm not a religious person per se. I'm Jewish, obviously, and I'm Israeli and all the rest. So I have my values, my ethics are rooted in that. But I'm not someone who is like a devout person. I don't go to synagogue every Shabbat. But I think that the godlessness that exists more and more on the left allows them to neglect other human beings, forget what party they're in. I think it makes it easier for them when a CEO of a health company is shot to say, "Hey, it's no problem. He turned down some policies," and ignore the fact that he's a husband and a father and a human being. When two Israeli diplomats are shot, and the democratic socialist assholes of America that Mamdani is a part of and AOC is a part of, they release a statement saying, "Hey, let the guy go who shot them, and it's probably good that they were shot, these two innocent people." I think that godlessness is the reason why. And that's also why you don't see a lot of it going in the other direction, because a conservative who believes in God, someone who has faith, would not let a trans person, even if they disagree with trans ideology, drown as a result of a tropical storm. They wouldn't do it because that's still a human being. Then they might have an ideological conversation or a difference or a discussion against them. But that's not something you're seeing go in the other direction, I think. That's just my theory.
No, you're right. You're absolutely correct. It's a lot of this is going in one direction. It's very troubling because they are taking the stance that they have the moral high ground and that these people are subhuman. Anyone who voted for Trump is subhuman. Anyone who's a Republican is a subhuman. So then they don't even have to have compassion for them, even when it's little children that were drowning in a flood. This Austin thing is so troubling because the Austin Fire Department, those guys are the experts in high water river rescue. So he did not deploy those teams until very late into the event, and lives, they say, were definitely lost because these guys weren't deployed sooner. It all comes down to accountability. And what we're seeing is that over the past 4 years, this country got rid of accountability. You saw people fail upwards. You saw people be promoted based on check boxes. If they were black, gay, trans, whatever, they were promoted. And if not. So there was no meritocracy. Nothing was based on merit, and it was all based on these DEI parameters. And you don't see accountability. Like when Karen Bass let LA burn, zero accountability. The fire department had empty reservoirs, half their trucks were in service, all of that stuff, and she was cutting the budget. She's still the mayor. She hasn't resigned.
This is a
There's no
great
accountability.
example of what Judah was talking about earlier, by the way. This is a great example of this. The fact that the media disappear stories, and some of them are genuinely the most horrific stories you can possibly imagine. They disappear these stories if they don't celebrate the exact party line that they want to get across, right? If this is something that doesn't fit the narrative, they literally just memory hole, to use George Orwell's phrase, these stories. And we can say they're shills, right? We can go with your terminology, but they're doing it because that way they get to stay in power and make sure that in the future they can implement whatever they want to implement. And we simply don't do that on the conservative side of things. And I think that whether we can call it shilling or whether we can call it forgiving or whether we can call it any number of other things, we are not considering the fact that there has to be a step two to this. And I think it's a real problem. Reality is gone. And one side is willing to manipulate that reality in order to hang on to power and shape the world into what they want it to be. And the other side wants to get credit for calling out the smallest infractions, and they're not considering the consequences.
Yeah, absolutely right. You're spot on that one. It's telling, the fact that we see it all the time with news stories that I try to go look up. One piece of advice I'll tell you is try DuckDuckGo, try some of these other search engines. that are not Google, because Google's obviously left-leaning. Sergey Brin just came out and sent out a company-wide memo to Google saying that the United Nations is blatantly anti-Semitic. That took guts on his part. I'm proud he
Wow.
did that. Yeah.
My wife was doing this. I mean, I will admit I'm lazier, so I just whatever my computer gave me, I would search in and whatever. Like I started with ChatGPT and I paid for a membership. I just kept doing it. My wife, on the other hand, went to DuckDuckGo. She went to Grok. Oops, that didn't work out so well in the long run. But she was doing all of those things, looking for the alternative places. So now she's on Perplexity instead of ChatGPT. So she's really, quote unquote, doing the work to find
Yeah.
kind of unbiased sources. I think that's a really good suggestion.
Judah, what's next?
Whatever you want to talk about, because
I-
none of it matters. No news story matters right now. Nobody gives a crap. The story men brought up, he's 100% correct about the fire chief. That's a huge story. A fire chief that actually let people die. That's 2 days ago. It means nothing to them. It means nothing to them.
Because they're not going to get their clicks talking about that. That's why.
All right, so let's talk about strategy for a second. You highlighted it. Okay, moving on.
I don't know what there is to move on to, Golan. I'm being honest with you with my statement.
I think though the answer to your question, Judah, is that it's not about ignoring everything else. Because and this is the important part. People like us, and there are a lot of people like us, Judah, are saying the same thing. They may not be phrasing it this way. We may be raising something, as you did, that lets people wake up and recognize there's a problem here because people succumb to clickbait. So those people who agree with you and other people then hearing us do it or doing it themselves is how we fix it, not ignoring the rest of the stories. Right now, Marco Rubio is imposing new sanctions on a UN rapporteur, this woman who has been for years anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, anti-American, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, a real garbage fire of a person. It's Francesca Albanese. And this is something that UN Watch has been working on for years and has been approaching the UN about for years with proof, with receipts, with the fact that she had trips paid for by Hamas-aligned organizations and terror groups that are designated such. And the UN ignored it because the UN is one of the most corrupt organizations out there. So just like we're raising this, Marco Rubio said, guess what, world? Time for you to recognize that the UN is corrupt. Because us shouting about it over here in Jewland is not enough. We needed someone at that level to do it. And by the way, someone who is not Jewish. And Marco Rubio and Donald Trump are both pointing the finger at this organization and saying, you're corrupt, and now you're going to pay for it, and we're going to let the world know it. So now all those people who got to say over and over again, but the United Nations said, now they understand that they are quoting a corrupt organization. Whether they'll accept it or not is a different conversation, and we'll see as we go forward. But this is, again, the first step, making people aware. You bringing that up made people aware that they are focused on the wrong thing. And now it might shake them loose from that malaise.
The fact that the UN did not get rid of her. There's so many examples of her blatant running cover for these terrorist organizations, demonizing Israel at every turn. She said that the state of Israel should be dismantled, doesn't have a right to exist, all of that stuff. And they just renewed her contract. With
proof in hand, by the way, with proof actually in hand.
Hillel Neuer, who's the head of UN Watch, handed them this huge dossier on her, and they just ignored the entire thing. So good for America for doing that.
Okay, so let's talk about another thing that doesn't really matter to Trump supporters, because another promise he kept, which was to block birthright citizenship, got obviously banned by a federal judge. It'll be going to the Supreme Court. I know it's not an important issue at all because these children weren't born on Epstein Island.
Judah's sarcastic is cutting like a switchblade.
But it doesn't matter, right? I mean, something that Trump ran on, which is a huge issue, which is birthright citizenship, where, illegals come here, have children, or people fly into our country, like from China, to have children to make them American citizens. And, of course, being blocked by another federal judge, we go to the Supreme Court. John Roberts, being the numbnuts that he is, will probably vote with the left on this issue. And there you have it.
How did this happen? Didn't we just deal with the Supreme Court saying that we can't have Just random judges affect the entire country?
No, they said they're gonna look at it and vote on it.
I see. Okay, so we're still in the midst of random judges.
Right.
I thought that was settled, but you might be right.
Even if they haven't settled it, okay? The idea that they just had the conversation about random judges not being able to affect nationwide injunctions or whatever, and then this happens, it's almost like, I just want to show you that I'm spitting in your face. This is just another example of Trump having to wait in line while they play games, and the country stands as a hostage as a result.
I think the Supreme Court's going to come down on the side of the administration on this one. There's, when we talked about, and we've talked about this in the past, that if a foreign army invades your country and has kids here, they're not entitled to birthright citizenship. So there are stipulations. And the reason that they actually passed that law was because there were people that were brought here against their will, namely slaves. They are entitled to birthright citizenship. They did not invade. That's not an invasion. There's a very big difference. And it's plausible to say that the people that came here voluntarily should be treated differently than the people that were forced here. People that were forced here, that have been living here, are entitled to birthright citizenship, especially if they were forced here by the people living here. So, if the Dutch brought them to America and the Americans, whatever, whoever was here at the time, the Brits, bought them, and then they were slaves, and then they were emancipated, they should get citizenship. But people that are invading the country, they leave the Venezuelan jails and they travel up through Central South America, they come here, they are not entitled to birthright citizenship. So we'll see how the Supreme Court plays this out.
I have to point out how they got around this. Judah, my mouth, I don't know if you saw on video, my mouth hung open for a moment there, because how did Judge LaPlante do this? So just to be clear, SCOTUS did issue a ruling about nationwide injunctions coming from federal judges. How did they get around this? Because there is a precedent. The precedent is using class action certification. Okay, I'm going to read this directly. Instead of issuing a blanket nationwide injunction, which the Supreme Court has already said is not allowed, the judge certified a nationwide class of affected infants. Those people are children born to non-citizens affected by Trump's birthright citizenship executive order. I'm going to boil this down into layman's terms. The Supreme Court said, you can't block the president's orders for the whole country with one ruling. And the judge said, no problem. I don't have that. I have a class action lawsuit. Oh, who are your clients? Every baby in America is part of the lawsuit. Now it's legal. That's literally what was done here. Any baby that could be affected by this ruling is officially part of the lawsuit. So essentially, this is just an end around for what the Supreme Court just decided is not allowed. So basically, it's all under the legal cover of class action rather than a direct nationwide injunction. My head is swimming right now by the fact that they are doing this, but that's how they're getting around it. They're continuing to do the same lawfare they were doing.
Why would they stop? Why would they stop? Conservatives don't give them a reason to. Put 100 conservatives into a room, you got 100 different opinions. In life, we have to make a list. Make a list of 10 things that are important to you in life.
I just think it's a matter of keeping it in perspective. I think that we actually agree, because we agree that the messaging was off, and we agree that they should fix the messaging. Issue one out of the way. Now, we've already talked about it, and one of the things that we're proud of is that we didn't do an hour clickbait episode on Epstein, because that's not what really matters. It's something that concerned us. We talked about it. We got out of the way. And now let's talk about the things that actually matter, right? So it's like if your kid gets straight A's and wins the jiu-jitsu championship and does all the rest of that, but also drew on the wall. You're like, we got to talk about drawing on the wall. But you know what? I'm not going to focus all my energy on it, because it's one issue and we do have to talk about it. But look at all the great stuff you do. You know what? Overall, you're a great kid and I love you. Just don't do that again. Okay. And that idea of keeping it in perspective is all I'm talking about. And I think it's all Judah's talking about, right?
Yeah. What I'm saying is Benny Johnson should be leading off his show with his clickbait of being what men spoke about this Kernsville guy not sending in the fire trucks. That is a massive freaking story that's getting no attention because the oxygen has been totally sucked out of the room. So
this time it's not getting attention because of the people who should be bringing it up, not the people who are trying to memory hole it. That's the issue.
Yeah, I don't know what
people you should be getting mad at is Benny Johnson.
I am getting mad at Benny Johnson.
I think that's exactly who Judah is mad at.
That is who I'm mad at. I'm not upset with you for saying, because I actually believe you have the right motives to why you want to see Epstein and those files open. I believe that in my heart of hearts, you want to see criminals go to prison. Alex Jones, Benny Johnson, Tucker Carlson, Steve Bannon don't think like you. This is where the disconnect is. You're a good human that has children that wants to see pedophiles go to prison. These people do not. They are doing this to make money and to separate the party. Plain and simple.
So actually, Judah, I've got a question for you, because I agree with you, actually, on this one 100%. Those people, I don't believe, are conservatives. Okay, that's my opinion. I don't believe they're conservatives. I believe they are just snake oil salesmen. So if that's what they are, how do we make the rest of the people in the party understand that they should be excommunicated? They shouldn't be considered part of the party. How do we show them that someone as popular and the conservative movement as Tucker Carlson belongs in the trash heap instead of in front of their eyeballs? How do we do that?
This goes back to Men's point where I agree with him again, which is the messaging. The messaging from this White House since day one has been atrocious. We've all agreed with that. We've all said that. They had to get ahead of a story they didn't get ahead of. And when you can come out and just say, you know what? We screwed up. We screwed up. Come out, say you screwed up, and that puts away a lot of the fires. Get ahead of a story, go on. That's just my humble opinion. And I think people are extremely forgiving if you say we screwed up. And it angers me to no end that they're not doing that.
And I think that one step beyond that is what Trump did with Tucker Carlson during the Iran thing, when he went on Truth Social and he said, somebody please explain to kooky Tucker Carlson that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Why? Because it's about discrediting these people. So if they truly want to make this party stronger, let's come out and say, you know what? That was not a good investigation. We're going to go through what Men said earlier. Give us time. We're going to redo the investigation. This came in through the Biden White House that has been screwing up everything. They were so busy propping up Weekend at Bernie's, they didn't have an opportunity to do this. We're going to do it right. Forgive us. We screwed up. Beyond that, stop listening to these people instead of giving them oxygen. And I get that Don Jr. is friends with Tucker, and I get that Vance is friends with Tucker and all these other people, but it's time to start separating the wheat from the chaff. It's time to start saying these people cannot be trusted. And if you are part of this movement, take them out of your feed, or else you are being fed misinformation. And I think someone on a world stage needs to say that and say it consistently, because when he said that about Tucker, or when he said, I don't give a damn what Tucker Carlson said, remember he said that on TV, those things mattered. And I think the more that's said, the more likely it is that people are going to start to come around to it, instead of splitting their focus in the, no, also Tucker, but also Candace, but also Trump, but also this, but also that. We can't have it all at once.
Listen, you're seeing right now the New York Post switching their tone on Trump. They have been, which means the Wall Street Journal, which means Fox News other than Hannity. We're seeing, because it's obviously all Rupert Murdoch and Paul Ryan. So we're seeing a switch in tone from them, because I think they even realize right now what's going on. You know, I've been speaking to people about what I would personally do. I would take a guy like Benny Johnson and I would walk Benny Johnson through it. And the reason I use Benny Johnson is because he's very presentable, good looking guy. He's extremely charismatic. He seems to be somewhat genuine of the lot. And I would use a guy like Benny Johnson and say, here we have it. This is what's going on. That would be my best thing.
Look, I don't know the details, but one thing is certain is that there's a manifest. They know who was there. Go after the predators. But you can't tell me that every single one of them is a national security secret and a CIA asset. Bullshit. Don't believe it.
Again, we're agreeing with
you. You are talking about the case, and Judah's talking about the messaging. And I think there's two different things.
No. And it's not that I don't disagree with him.
That's my point. That's my point. You guys are talking about two different issues. I think we all agree with Mend. I think Mend is right. Go after the predators, say mea culpa, you screwed up, redo the investigation, do the thing.
Right.
I'm going to move on. LAist, which is a left-leaning, super left radio station here in LA. I believe it's from NPR. They have a report out that says since the deportation started, hospitals are seeing 30% drop, like a 30% drop in people showing up for their appointments. 30% of the people that had appointments are canceling them, which is telling, because that means that 30% of our hospitals are being used by undocumented illegal aliens. Can you imagine how much better our healthcare system would be if they weren't spending all that money on undocumented illegal aliens?
There's going to have to be a whole correction because of Obamacare. I mean, this whole concierge service business, big pharma, what they've done with the pills, with overcorrecting prescription drugs is insane. This is another topic that you could go down the rabbit hole of on is the RFK people, and I disagree with a lot of stuff. But what are you going to do? That's where we are. But yes, I think that's a good thing that our system is being less overrun by the fact that illegals are either leaving or being deported. I think is an exceptional thing. I'd love to see the statistic on that because that's fantastic.
And a byproduct will be when they do the next census and they could actually count citizens and representation gets changed in Congress.
I'd like to do Judah's challenge, actually. I'd like to make a list of all the things that I think are actually making my life better as an American, right? Whether it's the number of illegals that are counted and how that affects representation, whether that's how the hospitals are going to run more efficiently, whether that's how DEI practices are going to screw over my children and my friends and family, whether all of those things, all the things that we've been talking about, make that list and make a list of things I'm disappointed in, and then see which side of the scale is up or down, and then really make a decision about what things I want to focus on. I think this is a good challenge for all of our listeners.
But look at Ben Shapiro, who I'm not a huge fan of, but he's always tried to be intellectually honest, right? Wasn't a Trump supporter. Prager got him on board a little bit. He's never been a party line type of person. But what issues are most important to him is why he supported Trump. And we really have to make that list. And to be honest, all I'm saying is focus on what is an important issue for you and look at who's talking to you about certain issues and look at their motives. That's it. That's my take on it.
I think it's a good take, and I think it's a takeaway for all of our listeners to really think about that. Today got more heated than usual. And the interesting thing about it is that we're mostly on the same page. It's just we're looking at it from different perspectives, but I think that we agree. I think that we agree that the messaging has been bad, that it needs to get better, and that it's also been an incredibly successful run so far in less than 6 months into his second term. That I think we all are on the same page about.
Listen, my biggest thing is I can't deal with everybody that thinks they're 100% right. I'm not 100% right about this. I could understand men's perspective. That's what separates other people from what I'm trying to say. I get that people want the Epstein list. I get it that it's important to people. I get that they promise that. I get that. I hear people being experts on how he was killed. I hear experts on why the logs or this or that. Everybody I talk to, this is the reason. And once somebody says this is the reason, you can't have a conversation at that point. You simply
Just like everybody was an expert on cement during the Iran bombing.
That's exactly right. How do you exactly have a conversation? I am not negating anything men said. I respect his opinion 100%. The difference is others don't respect my view. And those people at that point have become the left. Okay, it is the full horseshoe theory in full force. If any of us were to say to these people, have a conversation, they wouldn't have the conversation. They would not have the conversation with us.
No, but what we're doing here is how you combat that. What you do is you put out a better take, right? And a better take could be both criticizing the administration for the way they're handling this and giving them props for the way they're handling other stuff.
Yeah, listen, 100%. And at the same time, it'd be okay to say, I want to move on. I want to move on because I think it's for the betterment of the country and for the next 12 years. Everybody talks about draining the swamp. It's not going to happen in 3 weeks or 6 months. It's going to take years to get what we need to do. So if that's the goal line for everybody, priorities, goal line. And let's wrap it up on that. I mean, what are your priorities, goal line? I'm just curious. What are your priorities?
I want to make the country and the world a better place for my children and for my grandchildren to be. That's the bottom line. I want my life to be good too. I want to not be discriminated against, all of those things. But ultimately, it's about securing the future, period.
What about you, man?
Same thing. Exact same thing. I want America to be secure. I want America to be prosperous for my kids and future generations. That's what I want. I am not about dividing the country. I think uniting the country is how we get there. But we just want America to prosper.
Let's end it on that note. I want to Thank everybody for listening. I want to thank everybody that's been downloading the podcasts and everybody that's been promoting the podcast. It's greatly appreciated. You can find us on Apple. You can find us on Spotify. Of course, you can find us on YouTube at The Daily Cheat Sheet. You could also find us on Substack at The Daily Cheat Sheet, Instagram at The Daily Cheat Sheet, X, TD Cheat Sheet, Truth at The Daily Cheat Sheet. You can find us all over. Just type in Daily Cheat Sheet. And want to thank everybody and wish everybody a good morning, afternoon, and night world wherever you are.